My perfect wife's brutal affair and endless lies. My cold, calculated revenge dismantled her life, piece by piece. A shocking true story. Throwaway for obvious reasons, obviously. Never thought I'd be posting here, honestly. Always thought Sarah and I were the exception. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 10, and everyone called us the perfect couple. The kind of relationship others envied, you know? We had the house, the dog, steady jobs, weekend trips planned, shared hobbies, just bliss. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment things started to feel off. It wasn't a huge, dramatic explosion, just a slow, creeping chill. Like someone left a window open in winter. She started staying late at work, which was fine. Her job could be demanding. But then the work events became more frequent, stretching into the night. Her phone became an extension of her hand, face down on the table when I was around, vibrating constantly with messages she'd dismiss as just group chats or work stuff. Calls taken in other rooms, doors shut. And the sex? It dwindled to almost nothing. When it did happen, it felt clinical, distant, like she was just going through the motions. I tried to talk to her, of course, asked if everything was okay, if she was happy, if it was me. Each time, she'd get defensive, her voice sharp like a viper strike. What's wrong with you, Mark? You're so paranoid lately. Do you not trust me? I'm just busy, okay? Don't you think I'm stressed? She'd twist it around, making me feel like the bad guy for even questioning our perfect life. I started to doubt myself, thinking maybe I was just being insecure, maybe I was pushing her away with my nagging. My gut, though, that damn gut feeling, it screamed that something was terribly wrong. It was a gnawing anxiety, a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. I tried to ignore it, to logic it away, but the feeling just got stronger, more insistent, like a constant hum in the background of my life. I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The knot in my stomach turned into a full-blown fist clenching my insides. I couldn't shake the feeling. One Tuesday, Sarah said she had to work late, a critical project meeting that would run past midnight. She even texted me a photo of her desk, buried under papers, around 8 p.m. See? Swamped. She wrote. But something felt off. Her office building usually had lights blazing, but the windows looked dark in the distance from our house. It was a dumb detail, but it bothered me. I convinced myself I was being ridiculous, but then an impulse hit me. Maybe I'd bring her some coffee, a little surprise pick-me-up. Show her I was supportive, despite my irrational fears. So, I grabbed her favorite latte, drove downtown, humming along to the radio, trying to push down the anxiety. Pulled into the parking lot of her building. Dark. Really dark. Only the security lights were on. My heart started thumping like a drum solo. I walked to the main entrance, buzzed security. No answer. Tried her direct office line from my phone. Straight to voicemail. Panic started to set in, but then I saw it. Her car. Parked in a spot close to the employee entrance, but not the usual spot she took when she was genuinely working late. It was angled weirdly. And then I saw a man in the passenger seat. Not her boss, not a colleague I recognized. A younger guy, head thrown back, laughing. And Sarah? She was leaning over, kissing him. Deeply, hands tangled in his hair. Right there, in the bloody parking lot of her office. The critical project meeting was clearly going down, all right. My blood ran cold, then boiled. It was like getting hit by a truck, but the truck was made of pure ice and fire. My world just shattered. I stood there, frozen, watching them. The laughter, the kisses, the way her hands moved through his hair. It was all a punch to the gut. This wasn't some casual flirtation. This was raw, passionate, intimate. This was my wife, doing things with another man that she hadn't done with me in months. My mind raced, trying to find an explanation, a way to make it not true, but there was no denying the brutal reality unfolding right in front of me. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling like my chest was going to explode. It could have been minutes or an eternity. Eventually, they pulled apart, and she turned her head, catching my eye. Our eyes locked. The laughter died on her lips, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Her face drained of all color. The guy, oblivious, just leaned in for another kiss, but she flinched away, pushing him gently. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My throat was constricted, my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. I just stared, letting the icy fury build. She scrambled out of the car, practically tripping over her own feet, leaving the other guy bewildered in the passenger seat. He looked at me, then at her, a puzzled expression on his face. She started towards me, her hands outstretched, a desperate, pathetic whimper escaping her lips. Mark, wait. It's not what it looks like. Asterisk, it's not what it looks like. Asterisk, my mind screamed. I just shook my head, a slow, deliberate movement. The latte I'd bought for her, still warm in my hand, felt like a bomb. I just dropped it. The cup hit the pavement with a soft thud, spilling its contents in a dark, swirling pattern that mirrored the chaos in my head. I turned, got back into my car, and drove away, leaving her standing there under the harsh parking lot lights, her silhouette shrinking in my rearview mirror. The guy finally got out of her car, looking utterly confused. I just kept driving, the silence in my car deafening, the image of them seared into my brain like a brand. I was shaking so badly I could barely keep the car straight. My entire body felt like it was on fire, but my soul was freezing. The drive home was a blur of flashing streetlights and the overwhelming roar of blood in my ears. I don't even remember getting through the front door. I just remember the cold, empty house and the absolute deafening silence that amplified the screaming in my head. I paced. For hours, I paced. My phone buzzed incessantly, Sarah's name flashing on the screen. Call after call, text after text. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready. I couldn't be. She finally came home around 2 a.m., the garage door rumbling, a sound that usually brought comfort, now bringing dread. I was sitting in the living room, lights off, just staring into the darkness. She found me there, a ghost in the shadows. She gasped when she saw me, then flicked on the light. The sudden brightness was blinding, but it didn't hide the tear tracks on her face or the desperate fear in her eyes. Mark, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please, let me explain. I just looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved, married, built a life with. And she was a stranger. Explain what, Sarah? My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a monotone that surprised even me. Explain the critical project meeting in your car? Explain who he was? Explain why you were kissing him like your life depended on it, in the parking lot of the building you told me you were working in? She started to cry harder, big, heaving sobs. It's nothing, Mark. He's a new guy at work. He was having a bad night, and I was trying to comfort him. It got out of hand. It meant nothing. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. Asterisk meaningless? Asterisk my blood began to boil again. Meaningless. So, the months of late nights, the phone glued to your hand, the excuses, the lies, that was all just a meaningless mistake too? You think I'm an idiot, Sarah? You think I can't see what's right in front of my face? She tried to approach me, tried to touch my arm, but I recoiled as if burned. I swear, Mark, it only happened once. Tonight was the first time. I swear on everything. The lies just kept spilling out, faster and faster, desperate and transparent. It wasn't just the betrayal that cut me now. It was the blatant disrespect, the assumption that I was so stupid I'd believe her pathetic excuses. The rage, cold and hard, started to solidify in my core. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a calculated deception, a complete shredding of every ounce of trust and love I'd ever given her. And she still thought she could lie her way out of it. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Sarah tried everything. Begging, pleading, tearful apologies, even anger directed at me for making her feel guilty. She spun an elaborate tale about the guy being a troubled new intern, and she was just trying to mentor him, and he'd misunderstood her kindness. She even claimed he tried to kiss her, and she was just trying to push him away when I saw them. The audacity was breathtaking. Each lie felt like a fresh stab wound. I, on the other hand, was a walking ghost. The shock had worn off, replaced by a deep, hollow ache that resonated through every fiber of my being. My appetite vanished. Sleep became a cruel joke, nightmares of her and him playing on a loop. My mind, usually sharp and analytical, felt like a fog-bound swamp. I'd stare blankly at walls, replaying every moment, every subtle shift in her behavior, every dismissive glance, every lie. The pain was physical, a constant pressure in my chest, a burning behind my eyes that no amount of tears seemed to relieve. But amidst the pain, a new emotion began to simmer. Not just anger, but a cold, calculated fury. It was the realization that the woman I had built my entire adult life around, the one I had trusted implicitly, had been so utterly contemptuous of me. She didn't just cheat. She lied, gaslit, and minimized my feelings. She thought she could get away with it, that I was too naive or too much in love to ever see the truth. The sadness was profound. I grieved for the future we'd planned, the memories we'd shared, the image of our perfect life that had been so brutally ripped apart. It wasn't just her I lost, it was us. The life I thought I had was a cruel illusion, built on a foundation of her deception. And the anger? It wasn't the kind of hot, impulsive rage that makes you scream. It was a silent, simmering volcano, slowly building pressure, waiting for the inevitable eruption. I felt stripped bare, exposed, and utterly, totally alone. The world suddenly looked different, darker, sharper. The colors seemed muted, and sounds were distant. Everything was tainted by her betrayal. I couldn't stay in that house. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every framed photo screamed her betrayal. So I packed a bag. Just essentials. Didn't even tell her where I was going. Just left a note. I need space. Don't call. I knew she wouldn't respect it, but I needed the illusion of control. I went to my brother's place, an hour away. He just took one look at my face and knew. No questions, just a hug and a cold beer. That's family, right? Being away from her, even for a day, helped clear the fog a little. The constant barrage of her lies and desperate pleas had been suffocating. Now, in the quiet, my thoughts became clearer, sharper. The sadness was still there, a constant companion, but the cold fury was growing. It was like a steel band tightening around my heart. The truth began to coalesce. I couldn't fix this. There was no working it out after such a profound breach of trust, such blatant disrespect. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by this manipulative stranger. And the idea of starting over, of forgiving her, felt like asking me to amputate a part of my soul. I wasn't just hurt. I was fundamentally broken by her actions. My perception of reality had been warped. This wasn't just a breakup. It was the demolition of my entire life's foundation. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she needed to understand the true cost of her actions. Not just to me, but to our life. I needed to act, not out of blind rage, but with a cold, precise purpose. I spent hours talking to my brother, piecing together the timeline, the lies, the sheer audacity of it all. He just listened, his face hardening with each detail I shared. He didn't offer advice to save the marriage. He understood it was beyond saving. His eyes simply mirrored my own simmering anger. This wasn't about revenge in the sense of hurting her physically. It was about dismantling the life she thought she could have, built on my trust and her deceit. It was about showing her the real consequences. This wasn't going to be pretty, but it was going to be final. The first step was to gather proof, not just for my peace of mind, but for the inevitable legal battle. I discreetly started checking bank statements. Bingo! A pattern of unexplained cash withdrawals, little luxuries Sarah had been buying for herself lately that didn't align with her usual spending. Then, I remembered her old tablet, tucked away in a drawer, rarely used. She'd forgotten to sign out of her email. It was like opening Pandora's box. Email exchanges, text messages synced from her phone. She must have forgotten that setting was on. Even some sickeningly explicit photos. Dates, times, pet names. His name was Kyle. A quick search on social media confirmed it. He was indeed a new guy at work, as she'd claimed, but definitely not an intern. He was a manager in a different department. And their affair wasn't just tonight was the first time. It had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies, of late nights, of me thinking I was going crazy. The betrayal was deeper, wider, more brutal than I could have imagined. I methodically saved everything, screenshots, printed copies, even a backup of her entire email history. Then, I consulted a lawyer, a close family friend who specialized in family law. He listened patiently, his expression growing grimmer with each piece of evidence I laid out. "Mark," he said, his voice quiet, "this isn't just cheating. This is blatant marital misconduct. We can make sure she pays for this." He outlined a strategy that was swift and decisive. The goal was to secure as much as possible for myself, given her actions. While the lawyer worked on the legal end, I started my own plan. This wasn't about public humiliation, not directly. It was about surgically removing her from my life and making sure she understood the cost. I changed the locks on the house, canceled her access to joint bank accounts, only leaving enough for basic needs, as advised by the lawyer, and stopped paying for her credit cards. I also sent an anonymous tip to her company's HR department, including some of the tamer, yet still unprofessional, communications between her and Kyle, focusing on the potential for workplace harassment claims against him and her misuse of company time. It was cold, calculated. It felt like I was moving through thick ice, each step deliberate and heavy. The anger had solidified into a chilling resolve. This wasn't just about escaping the marriage. It was about ensuring she faced the full, unvarnished consequences of her actions. There would be no easy out, no gentle separation. She had chosen a brutal path, and I was going to make sure she walked it to its painful conclusion. For anyone watching this, if you're going through something similar, remember to subscribe to the channel and like the YouTube channel for more updates and support. It helps. When Sarah finally reached me, after days of frantic calls to my brother and voicemails filled with increasing desperation, her tone had shifted. The tearful apologies were gone, replaced by a brittle anger. She'd figured out I'd changed the locks and blocked her access to money. "Mark, what the hell is going on?" she shrieked into the phone. "My cards are declined. I can't get into the house. You can't just do this. This is our house, our money." "No, Sarah," I said, my voice flat and emotionless, surprising myself with its steadiness. "It's my house. The deed is in my name. And it was my money you were spending on your little boyfriend." A stunned silence on her end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Boyfriend? What are you talking about?" "It was a mistake, Mark. I told you. He tried to kiss me. I was trying to push him away." The lies again. Even now. "Don't even bother, Sarah." I cut her off. "I saw your emails. I saw the photos. 8 months, Sarah. 8 months of you lying to my face, screwing your coworker, and making me feel like I was insane. It's all in the hands of my lawyer now. Expect papers soon." The next sound was a strangled sob, then pure fury. "You went through my things. You're invading my privacy. How dare you? You have no right. You forfeited any right to privacy, Sarah, when you started sleeping with another man while claiming to be working late," I retorted, a faint tremor in my voice, but I forced it down. And speaking of work, I also forwarded some of those emails to HR. Apparently, workplace relationships and misuse of company resources are frowned upon, especially when one party is a manager. There was a guttural gasp, then the line went dead. She'd hung up on me. Good. I didn't want to hear another word. The conversation left me emotionally drained, but also with a strange sense of perverse satisfaction. It was a small victory, but it felt like finally taking a deep breath after being underwater for months. The game had changed. She was no longer dictating the narrative with her lies. Now I was. And the silence after the call, while still heavy, was no longer deafening with her deceit. It was a silence filled with purpose. The legal proceedings started swiftly. My lawyer, true to his word, filed for divorce based on marital misconduct, citing the overwhelming evidence of her affair. Sarah, true to her form, tried to deny everything at first, claiming the emails were fabricated, the photos doctored. But my lawyer had anticipated this, presenting the evidence in such a way that it was undeniable. Her own words, her own photos, time-stamped and irrefutable. Her lawyer, a very unimpressed-looking man, from what I heard, quickly advised her to cease her denials. The tide had turned. She was facing a costly and embarrassing battle she couldn't win. The HR tip also had its desired effect. Kyle was quietly reassigned to a different, less visible role, and Sarah was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation into her conduct and misuse of company time and resources. It was a soft landing compared to being fired outright, but the writing was on the wall. Her career, or at least her upward trajectory there, was effectively dead. The divorce settlement was predictably brutal for her. Given the evidence, I retained the house, the primary car, and a significant portion of our joint savings. She received a small settlement, enough to get started, but nowhere near what she'd expected or what would have been a 50-50th split in a no-fault divorce. It wasn't about being vindictive financially. It was about ensuring she faced the consequences as advised by my lawyer. I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed, ready to build a new life with Kyle on the ruins of mine. Watching her in court, her face pale and drawn, stripped of her usual haughty demeanor, was surreal. There was no triumph, no gloating on my part, just a quiet, profound emptiness. This wasn't the happy ending I'd envisioned for my marriage, but it was an ending, and it was just. She had chosen to burn our life to the ground with her infidelity and lies, and now she was standing in the ashes, alone. The brutal revenge I sought wasn't a fleeting moment of pain. It was the methodical dismantling of her comfortable, deceitful life, piece by piece. And as the gavel came down, signifying the finality of it all, a heavy weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a cold, hard resolve for my own future. After the divorce was finalized, the silence in the house was no longer a symbol of dread, but a canvas for a new beginning. Sarah was gone, her lingering presence slowly fading as I began to repaint, reorganize, and reclaim the space. It wasn't an overnight transformation, of course. The emotional scars were deep, and healing was a slow, arduous process. I started therapy, something I'd never considered before. It helped immensely to process the trauma, the betrayal, the erosion of my trust. My therapist helped me understand that my anger was valid, but also that holding on to it would only hurt me in the long run. She helped me grieve the loss of my marriage, not as a failure on my part, but as the painful end of something that had already died from neglect and deceit. I reconnected with friends I'd somewhat neglected during Sarah's busy phase. They listened, supported, and didn't judge. My brother remained my rock, always there with a listening ear or a distracting movie night. I even picked up an old hobby I'd abandoned years ago, woodworking. The methodical precision, the smell of sawdust, the tangible creation of something new from raw materials. It was incredibly therapeutic. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the colors in my world started to return. The constant pressure in my chest eased. The nightmares dwindled, replaced by quiet, dreamless sleep. I wasn't the same man who stood in that parking lot, shaking with disbelief and rage. I was scarred, yes, but also stronger, wiser, and more attuned to my own needs and boundaries. The journey was far from over, but I was finally moving forward, not just drifting. It was about rebuilding, brick by painful brick, the foundation of a life that was truly mine, free from the shadow of her brutal betrayal. Life after the storm wasn't just about healing. It was about radical self-discovery. With Sarah gone, I realized how much of my identity had been wrapped up in her, in us. Now, I had to figure out who I was, independent of her shadow. I started doing things I'd always put off or she'd subtly discouraged. I took that cooking class I'd always wanted, signed up for a hiking group, and even adopted another dog, a rambunctious golden retriever named Max who filled the house with joy and chaos. I also spent a lot of time reflecting on the why. Not why she did it. That was her problem, her pathology, but why I hadn't seen it sooner, why I'd ignored my gut for so long. The therapist helped me understand that I wasn't to blame for her actions, but I could learn from my own tendency to prioritize her perceived happiness over my own instincts. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to that quiet voice of intuition that had screamed at me for months. It wasn't easy. There were still days, even weeks, when a random memory, a song, a smell, would trigger a wave of pain or anger. But those waves became less frequent, less intense. I learned to acknowledge them, let them pass, and then refocus on the present. The anger transformed, not into bitterness, but into a protective shield. I knew now what I wouldn't tolerate, what my boundaries were. I even heard, through the grapevine, that Sarah and Kyle didn't last. Surprise, surprise. Their relationship, born of deceit, apparently couldn't withstand the real-world pressures of her damaged reputation and his professional setback. It was a fleeting moment of schadenfreude, but it quickly faded. Their misery wasn't my victory. My victory was reclaiming my peace. This entire experience, brutal as it was, became a crucible. It burned away the illusions and left behind a stronger, more resilient version of myself. I was scarred, yes, but not broken. I was a survivor, ready to face whatever came next, head held high. A year and a half has passed since the divorce was finalized, and I'm a completely different person. The house feels like my home now, filled with Max's joyful barks and the scent of my increasingly confident cooking experiments. My career is thriving. The focus and clarity I gained from the ordeal actually pushed me to excel. I've even started dating again, cautiously, and with a far clearer understanding of what I want and what I absolutely won't tolerate in a partner. The brutal revenge I spoke of earlier? It wasn't about her suffering, though that was a byproduct. It was about reclaiming my life, systematically dismantling the foundation of lies she had built, and ensuring she faced the legal and professional consequences of her choices. It wasn't about physically harming her, but about making sure she couldn't just walk away from the wreckage she created without consequence. And in that sense, I achieved it. She lost the comfort, the stability, and the reputation she so desperately clung to. Looking back, the emotional journey was a roller coaster. From the initial shock and gut-wrenching pain to the slow-burning rage, then the quiet acceptance and the arduous process of rebuilding. It felt like dying and being reborn. And honestly, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I also wouldn't trade the lessons learned. My biggest takeaway, my advice to anyone going through something similar. 1. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting your own instincts. 2. Gather evidence. Hard proof is your best friend, especially when dealing with a pathological liar. It protects you legally and provides undeniable validation for your feelings. 3. Prioritize yourself. Get a good lawyer, get therapy, lean on your support system. Your mental and emotional health are paramount. 4. Don't try to fix them. You can't. A cheater's actions are a reflection of their character, not yours. You deserve better than to live with deceit. 5. Revenge is a dish best served cold, legally. Don't resort to violence or public shaming. Let the system and their own poor choices deliver the consequences. A well-executed legal strategy is far more devastating and satisfying in the long run. It took time, grit, and a whole lot of internal work, but I came out on the other side. Stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. It was a brutal awakening, but it led me to a better, more authentic life. If you've been following along with my story and found any solace or insight, please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the YouTube channel. It genuinely helps keep these real stories coming. Thanks for letting me share this here. I know it's a long one, but I needed to get it all out. The journey of recovery isn't a straight line. It has its peaks and valleys. There were moments, even after the divorce, when I'd catch a glimpse of a couple laughing or hear a particular song, and the memories would flood back. The insidious nature of betrayal is that it doesn't just hurt you in the moment, it taints your past. You start questioning everything, wondering if any of it was real. Was our anniversary trip just a cover for her sneaking calls? Was that tender moment actually just a performance? My therapist called it retrospective gaslighting, where I was effectively gaslighting myself by reevaluating every past interaction through the lens of her infidelity. It was exhausting. Learning to forgive myself for not knowing, for trusting someone who proved untrustworthy, was crucial. I realized I couldn't undo the past, but I could choose how I let it define my future. I started journaling, pouring out all the raw, unfiltered emotions onto paper. It was ugly at first, rage, despair, self-pity. But gradually, as I wrote, the chaos started to organize itself. I began to see patterns, understand my own responses, and acknowledge the progress I was making. It was like charting a map through my own emotional wilderness. One surprising outcome was a newfound empathy for others going through similar situations. Before this, I might have offered platitudes. Now, I understood the visceral pain, the shattering of reality, the sheer exhaustion of rebuilding. When a friend recently confided about marital troubles, I didn't just offer empty words. I listened, truly listened, with an understanding born of fire. I didn't push my experience on them, but I was there, a testament to survival. This experience, while deeply personal, connected me to a broader human struggle, reminding me that even in the darkest moments, you are never truly alone in your suffering. There is always a path forward, even if you can't see it yet. As time stretched on, the sharp edges of the pain softened into a dull ache and eventually into a scar. A reminder, not a fresh wound. I even found myself able to look at photos of Sarah from before the betrayal, and while a twinge of sadness remained for the person I thought she was, the overwhelming rage had dissipated. It was replaced by a sense of detachment, like looking at an old movie poster. The biggest shift, though, came in my understanding of trust. Before, I had given it freely, almost blindly, to those I loved. Now, trust was something earned, slowly, deliberately. It wasn't about suspicion, but about healthy boundaries and a keen awareness of actions versus words. I learned that consistency, transparency, and respect were the cornerstones of any real relationship, not just romantic ones. I continued to build my new life. Max, my dog, became my constant companion, an anchor of unconditional love and loyalty. My woodworking projects grew more ambitious, each finished piece a testament to focus and dedication, a stark contrast to the chaos of my past. My social circle expanded, filled with people who were genuinely supportive and brought positive energy into my life. I even ran into Sarah once, months after the divorce, at a grocery store. She looked diminished, not well. The confident, bitchy veneer was gone, replaced by a weary resignation. We exchanged a brief, awkward glance, a silent acknowledgement of the wreckage that lay between us. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a quiet recognition that our paths had diverged completely. She was a ghost from a past life. I nodded curtly, turned my cart, and continued down the aisle. The fact that I could do that without my heart racing or my stomach clenching was proof of just how far I'd come. The revenge had been served, the lesson learned, and I had moved on. The brutal cycle was broken. The process of rebuilding wasn't just about my personal life. It also spilled over into my professional sphere. The renewed focus, the sharpened resolve that emerged from the crucible of betrayal, surprisingly made me a better leader at work. I was more decisive, less prone to procrastination, and ironically, better at sniffing out deceit or hidden agendas in complex projects. My colleagues even commented on a newfound gravitas. I also learned the importance of forgiveness, but not for Sarah. Forgiveness for myself. Forgiving so much, for overlooking red flags, for holding onto an illusion for too long. It was about releasing the burden of self-blame, understanding that I was a victim of someone else's choices, not a co-conspirator in my own downfall. This self-forgiveness was a powerful act of liberation, allowing me to fully step into my new, authentic self. The brutal reality of her cheating also forced me to confront deeper issues about my own emotional resilience. I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. The ability to endure profound pain, to methodically plan a strategic response, to rebuild from absolute zero. These were not trivial accomplishments. They became foundational pillars for my future. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd reflect on the man I was before Sarah's betrayal. He was happier, perhaps, but also more naive, more vulnerable. The man I am now is scarred, yes, but also seasoned, wise, and undeniably stronger. The brutal lessons she taught me, through her cruelty, were inadvertently the most transformative of my life. She broke me, but in doing so, she cleared the path for me to put myself back together, not as a replica, but as an improved, more resilient model. And that, in its own strange way, was the ultimate, enduring revenge. It was a life reborn, better than before, something she could never take away.